Dr. Moskowitz, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right, looks like we have about 40 people, so maybe let's just give people another 2 minutes to join.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, and then while we're waiting, I'm just going to talk about this week's upcoming webinars, as I normally do. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Tanno. I am moderating most of these webinars and helping coordinate. So as usual, if you have suggestions or ideas or comments or feedback, you can send them my way. We have the link to an email address for the webinars on our website for you to send feedback. Dr. Moskowitz is going to talk today, and I'll introduce her in a moment. But Wednesday, we have our one of our newer doctors, Dr. Christina Council, is going to talk about preventative care. So I know that guidelines change every couple of years about what kinds of things are needed. So, for example, if you used to get a Pap smear every year, and now your gynecologist or your primary care doctor is saying no, every 3 to 5 years, and you're confused about that, or questions about mammogram screenings, colonoscopies, prostate cancer screenings. All of those guidelines have shifted a little bit in the last few years. So Dr. Council is going to go through those with you. And then Friday is going to be a lecture with Dr. Berger, who's one of the senior partners here. I think he's been with the practice at least 25 years, maybe longer, maybe a few shorter, but a long time. And he is going to talk about humor in medicine. So Dr. Berger, we call him our in-house prankster. He, usually around July, starts asking who's going to be Santa Claus and who's going to be the elf at our Christmas party. So he's kind of a goofball. So he's going to do something that's lighthearted on Friday. Hopefully everybody enjoys that talk. And then as far as Dr. Moskowitz goes, today she's going to talk about everyday mindfulness. I won't try to pretend that I can do this topic justice because she's going to do a whole lecture on it, but hopefully it's enjoyable. She's been doing a few of these webinars. She every time draws a large crowd and people are always excited to come listen. She does have 2 links to websites that I will include. So one, actually, she put this here on this page, whiteboardpsychology.com, and I'll share that in the chat so you can copy and paste it. And then she also has a Facebook page where she's been doing a bunch of cartoons to illustrate a lot of the feelings that are floating around during COVID. So I think right now we have about 75 people and growing by the minute. But I think we can go ahead and get started. And then feel free to submit questions to the chat or the Q&A section. Remember, these are recorded, so if you don't want anything shared or anything too personal, then don't include it in your question. And I try not to read out anything that's too personal just because I want to protect your privacy as well. But without further ado, Dr. Moskowitz, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Dr. Tanno. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so we are talking about everyday mindfulness today. And mindfulness is one of these words that gets a lot of buzz. It's, any conversation about wellness and mental health often talks about mindfulness. And it's a concept that's kind of abstract and sometimes hard for people to grasp onto. So we're going to start out today with just a little bit of an explanation and background on what mindfulness is. And then we're really going to pivot into how you can practice it and incorporate it into your daily life. Because the concept itself is something that I think a lot of people resist because they find it pretty abstract and woo-woo and maybe just not for them. But my hope for today is that you walk away with an understanding and appreciation of how you can really bring it into your everyday life in some very practical and helpful ways. So just to start with the definition, John Kabat-Zinn he's the guy who brought mindfulness really to Western medicine. He's at UMass and he pioneered this program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. It's an 8-week program that he developed to help people with chronic illness, chronic medical illnesses, all the kinds of conditions that doctors would kind of throw up their hands with, people who just weren't getting better. And he really showed that you can teach people mindfulness skills and incorporate some of these regular practices to really benefit both your physical health as well as your mental health. And he defines mindfulness as the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So that's a lot to digest there. And I think we can understand maybe what mindfulness is by trying to understand what it's not, which would be, the opposite of mindful would be mindless. And I think all recognize in our own lives all those times of mindlessness in our day-to-day life. It's when we're missing out on the present moment because we're zoned out or we're preoccupied with something else, that we're really not plugged into what's going on around us. It's that thing that happens when we get really hijacked away from our present reality into thoughts about the future, thoughts about the past, thoughts about what if this is going to happen, or if only I had done this, then I wouldn't be in this situation. It's those thought processes that really, people talk about their mind kind of racing out of control. It's that feeling of it being like on a runaway train, like the brakes are off and it is down the track and there's nothing you can do, and your mind is just kind of spinning on its own. Mindlessness is also, what happens when we get kind of caught up without even deliberately choosing this thought process, but we get kind of caught up in thoughts where we're really resisting things that are outside of our control. It's like, I hate this situation. I wish this wasn't true. This is not fair. This is not what I want. This isn't right. And when we get really stuck fixating on those things that are outside of our control, we're fighting a battle that we can't win. With mindlessness, also often we're kind of going through our lives not really being aware of what we're feeling in the moment, what our emotions are at that time, and what's making us feel that way, and what our emotions are leading us to do. So often when we're being mindless, we're really often stuck repeating patterns. They're just not healthy or constructive. And so when we're asking, why come to this webinar today? Why learn a little bit about mindfulness? Well, here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, for one, really enrich the present moment and kind of get back in contact with those little things going around us right now. We're learning to, this is really the big one, it's redirect your attention. I was at some training on mindfulness that talked about how the word mindfulness is so, some people reject it again because it's so woo-woo and out there. But when you call it mind training, that's people will like that concept better because that sounds like, okay, this is practical and helpful. But it's really a practice that's training us. The more we practice kind of catching where our mind goes, because our minds are always kind of going off in all directions, the more we consciously practice noticing when we're off track and deliberately redirecting our attention back, we're really building a skill where we have increasing amounts of ability to direct our attention where we think it's going to be most helpful. With mindfulness also, it's the practice of acknowledging what is without trying to resist it and fight it and deny it. So we have to just admit what is out of our control. And if we do that, then we can really let go of some of those unhelpful no-win battles inside our own head. If we let go of what's out of our control, we can really choose to redirect our attention back to what's in our control and what's healthy and constructive for us to do. And so to that last point there, the more we're aware of, what's going on, what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what's happening, then we can be much better prepared to choose how we're going to respond to situations, again, in the most productive and helpful way. So that's kind of the big picture of what is mindfulness and mindlessness and why we're talking about this in the first place. But with mindfulness, it's much more effective to just do it than to talk about it. So that's where we are going to get in a little bit of practice right now. So this is a very famous mindfulness exercise. called the raisin exercise. And in the little blurb that went out over email for this webinar, there's a little note in there that said to get the most out of it, we're asking you to have a small piece of food available. So traditionally that's a raisin for this exercise, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a chocolate chip. It could be a piece of popcorn. It could be preferably anything that you would normally grab a handful of and pop into your mouth without giving it any thought. But in this instance, we're going to take one single piece of whatever it is, whether it's a raisin or something else, and we're going to really slow down the process of eating it. And before we can get to eating it, we're going to experience it on with all of our senses. So, all right, I'm going to grab some instructions here. Okay, so this is our mindful raisin exercise. So we're going to start by just picking up whatever it is. I've got raisins here, but again, whatever you have available is good. And I really do encourage you to, if you have to walk away from the computer for a minute, it won't be too hard to pick back up and join us when you're ready, but to really do this alongside with me so that you can really experience it. Okay, so I've got my raisin here. And first, we're just going to take that piece of food and we're going to hold it between our pointer finger and our thumb. And we're going to really bring our full attention and awareness to it. And throughout this exercise, you can pretend you've never seen a raisin before, or whatever the piece of food is. I'm going to refer to a raisin throughout this. But pretend you've never seen a raisin before, and this is the first time you're observing it. So you're kind of taking in all of the novelty of seeing this raisin that you've never seen before in your life. So when something is new, we want to really get to know it. We're going to explore it very carefully. So we're really going to look at it and kind of see it with our full care and attention. So I'm looking at this raisin and I'm seeing all of the little folds and wrinkles, and I've got this lamp next to me, so the light is shining on it, so I can kind of see the bright parts and the shadows. I'm seeing how it's not a uniform texture. There's this one smooth spot, and then there's some really wrinkly spots. So we're just really noticing everything about the shapes, the color, the texture, all the little grooves. We can kind of put a little bit of pressure on it with our fingers and kind of get a sense of, what it feels like with the texture and how much give it has when we squeeze it a little bit. And I'm noticing whether it's soft or hard, noticing how different parts of it might feel a little bit different. And so we've been using our sense of sight, but now we can also use our sense of smell. So you can close your eyes if you want to really just kind of take in the aroma. See if you can get that raisin smell. All right. And so with each breath in, you're really noticing any aroma that comes up. Okay. And as we're smelling it, we can also pay attention to see if there's any effect that that's having automatically in our mouth or in our stomach. So when we smell food, we're often salivating and our body's preparing to eat it. So we can just kind of take a moment to notice what's happening inside there. All right. So we've been looking at this raisin, we've been feeling the texture, smelled it. Now we're going to bring the raisin up slowly to your mouth. And noticing how your arm and your hand know exactly where and how to position it. You've got this very tuned machine that can take this very small object and put it exactly where it needs to be. So we're just kind of noticing our whole body anticipating eating this raisin. All right. So here's where take a moment to ask you, when you put it in your mouth, not to chew it and swallow it right away. So we're slowing everything down here. So we're first just going to put that raisin in your mouth without yet chewing and hold it in your mouth for at least 10 seconds, exploring it with your tongue, kind of feeling the sensations of having it there. And notice this pause, notice what it feels like to take some time before chewing and eating the raisin. Kind of notice how that anticipation feels in your body, in your mouth right now. You can kind of move it around with your tongue a little bit. Press it up against the roof of your mouth. All right. Now, when you're ready, we're going to prepare to chew the raisin. So at first, just take 1 or 2 bites into it. And we're not swallowing it yet. So just those 1 or 2 bites, and then notice what happens when you bite into it. See what happens with the change in the taste and the texture right as you're starting to begin chewing. So we're going to take each bite down really slowly and deliberately, really noticing the raisin change in its texture and its form as we're biting down on it. And noticing the sensations that's bringing up in your mouth at the same time. Noticing yourself salivating, getting ready to swallow it. And then when you're ready, feeling ready to swallow the raisin, we're going to bring some awareness to this sensation. So even that feeling of that active swallowing is something that we're really practicing consciously. Notice how your mouth knows how to move it from the forward position in your mouth back so you can swallow it, send it down your throat. And finally, notice what's left of the raisin as you swallow, as it travels down to your stomach. Notice how your whole body is feeling as a whole after completing this exercise. So now we're going to do a little bit of an interactive debriefing of the raisin exercise. I used to do this exercise a lot in when I was training at the Veterans Hospital in Philadelphia, my internship, in the weight management and healthy lifestyle, healthy eating program they had there. And there was somebody who I walked through this exercise with, and she was like, I feel like I've just had a whole meal. So we're not setting the bar to expect that level of experience, although some of you might have had that feeling. But whatever your experience was, we want to hear kind of what you noticed as you were doing this exercise. So you can maybe type into the comment section, and maybe Dr. Tanno can read some of the comments aloud. The first question would be, how is this experience the same or different from how you normally eat?
To give people a minute or two to coordinate themselves to get to the chat, but yes, in the meantime, Dr. Moskowitz, can you maybe talk about some of the common things that some of your patients maybe more one-on-one tell you?
Yeah, absolutely. So people often will say, I never paid this much attention to a raisin. This is the kind of thing that if I'm eating raisins at all, it would be like I'm going to sprinkle them into cereal, or I'm going to eat a handful and not even notice each individual one. A lot of people are surprised by, so the next question here is, what, if anything, surprised you about the experience? And so I often hear from people, they were surprised that it had so much flavor. Surprised that the shape was it was so intricate that there's so much to see there when you really pay attention to look at all the little folds. People are surprised that it has that like a smell you can really pick up on.
So we had one brave soul here who noted that it was much slower and more flavorful, and also noticed the smell more.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we always hear from people, that it's the whole sensory experience is really enhanced when we slow it down and pay attention this way. Next question I have here is, what did you notice with the raisin or whatever food you chose in terms of sight, touch, sound, smell, taste? Often we're hearing from people, it's like packing a much more powerful punch than you might have expected from a humble raisin.
Uh,
in there.
a humble person. I think people are being shy because there's a lot of people on the call, and so I think people don't want to talk about their personal experiences. But
So just take it in. Hopefully you've been practicing along with us. Um, Now, the question would be, what thoughts or memories popped up while you're doing this exercise? So food and smells are often really tied to early life experiences, and we tend to put a lot of meaning around food. So maybe if there's, you know, like you're having raisin bran at your grandma's house or something, sometimes having a certain food will kind of trigger memories of having that food in a different time and kind of what that meant to you and all the meaning that we infuse into food.
all right, we got a few more brave souls here. So one person said, "I'm amazed how agile and effective a muscle the tongue is," which is just interesting trivia. And if I'm recalling correctly from my anatomy, which this might be many years ago at this point, but the tongue I think it's like per volume is one of the strongest muscles in the body. So if you think about what you can do, it's actually for such a small muscle, it can do a lot.
Yeah.
Another patient said, "I enjoyed the flavor much more, but also felt hungrier for more."
Mm.
And
Yeah.
maybe
So
some of this
what's your
exercise with your you have some small weight loss groups that sometimes you coach, and you do, I'm assuming, a lot of mindfulness with them on focusing on eating.
Yeah. So and I tend to think of it as healthy lifestyle groups as opposed to weight loss per se, because when we get too focused on the numbers on the scale, people can kind of go after that goal in a way that's not ultimately terribly helpful or sustainable. But we're really, to make sustainable change, we're really focused on how do you get yourself into healthier behaviors, recognizing that it's not just about weight, and that also that it's not going to be kind of an all or nothing thing, but we're trying to get it kind of a lifestyle change. Um, so yeah, so in healthy lifestyle groups where I'm often doing it, like I'll do it with a raisin and then I'll do it with a piece of chocolate, because I do have a good chocolate stash in my office. And I one time, those Trader Joe's like peanut butter, it's like Trader Joe's Reese's cups, but they're so much better than Reese's. They're it's really good. And people, whenever I do this with a group for the first time, people are often really shocked that we're here in a healthy lifestyle group and you're handing out chocolate to everybody. But the idea there is that if we can really slow down and enjoy our food and notice the flavor and the texture and the whole feeling of it and kind of welcome the whole experience, it's so much more satisfying. And then we can we're much more likely to be satisfied with the one piece of chocolate or two or three as opposed to the whole box. And so much of eating that's out of control that people really struggle with is mindless eating, emotional eating, eating in a way that feels it's not deliberate and you're not savoring it, but you're doing it to numb out difficult emotions, or because it's there, you're bored, or you're covering up a whole bunch of different other things. So we want eating to be enjoyable and something you can savor, and not something that feels punitive or overly restrictive.
Yeah, and then just a technical point here. Somebody had written in about when you guys write on the chat, like I guess it's just different levels of privacy. So when you select your option of who you're sending it to, if you send it just to the host, it goes to Dr. Moskowitz, and she has a different screen up because she has her slide, so she doesn't see that. So don't.
Dr. Tanno,
It,
may I interrupt
oh,
real quick? It goes to me.
Oh, it goes
It
to
goes to me
Travis,
because I'm
who's not okay. So basically, what I'm saying here is, if you want to send a question, send it to all panelists, because then I see it, and Travis, who's with our IT team, sees it, and Dr. Moskowitz would see it if she's on a different screen. But that makes sure that we see it versus all participants. It goes to everyone on the call. So if you're curious about that, and then the QA, if you submit something to the QA, that just comes to I believe it's the panelists. So again, me, Dr. Moskowitz and Travis. So pretty private place. But that's just a technical thing. And then one other patient that found this activity very relaxing.
Right. And actually this is a really good point about mindfulness, that often is kind of a point of confusion, where some people think about mindfulness as relaxation exercises, and there's a lot about mindfulness that has the side effect of being very relaxing, and that's often a very welcome thing. And I guess the important thing to remember and note there is it's relaxing without trying to be relaxing, right? So it's not like we're trying to force you to relax, or like you're trying really, you're intending to relax. It's just kind of, that's the byproduct of what happens when we slow ourselves down and just kind of tune in with our senses to what's going on in the present moment, and we can kind of get away from some of the noise that keeps us really stressed out. So
and we have a few more comments here. I'm not sure how much you want to focus on comments coming in, but somebody said, I was eating lunch when we started on the exercise and was hungry, but it made quite a difference. That's one. Somebody else said, I've never eaten so slowly. I was kind of thinking this is like when somebody offers you a piece of food that's really foreign to you, almost how I might eat if I were to travel abroad and try like a bug or something, where you kind of like look at it and you think about it, you put it in your mouth. So it is funny to look at something familiar and eat it so slow. Somebody else noted that there seemed to be more flavor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And again, that it just goes to the point where mindfulness, when we're really using our senses and directing our attention to notice that sensory input, we're getting so much more. Because when our minds are elsewhere, we're kind of doing things on autopilot, our brains are just not registering our senses with the same degree of intensity. Yeah. Those are all really important points, useful observations. And to the point about eating slowly, when I've done this exercise in the context of like a healthy lifestyle, weight management, maybe kind of program, people are, okay, well, this is not realistic. I'm not actually going to sit down and eat every meal like this, like taking 5 minutes to eat something the size of a raisin. And no, this is exaggerated as a mindfulness exercise. It's not really a sustainable way of approaching your food, but it is something you can carry forward to a degree, just in terms of, really, like, before you start eating, kind of pause, notice how it looks, notice the presentation, notice the smell. Take one bite at a time, put down your fork in between bites. Chew and kind of notice the flavors as you're chewing before swallowing. You can get a lot more out of your food when you slow down a little bit, even without doing this full-on, really intense, slow eating process. Is there anything else on the comments?
No, those are the only comments for now.
All right. So I think that, so the next thing is, as we're just reflecting a little bit on what that experience was like, we can use the raisin exercise as kind of a template for other applications of mindfulness in our daily life. And some of these are probably all things that we've touched on already, but just to bring it all together, the first thing is slowing down, right? We take in so much more when we just slow down the pace, and really kind of focus on doing one thing at a time, right? When you're eating in front of the TV, you're not going to be noticing it the same way. So one thing at a time, slow down, really using our senses to bring in all of that input from what you see, what you smell, what you touch, what you taste, what you hear. The raisin wasn't making any noise, but I don't know, like those old commercials for Rice Krispies, right? And they're listening to the popping sound of the Rice Krispies in the milk. Just the practice of redirecting your attention over and over again. This is something that probably folks were experiencing as you're trying to focus on this very, very specific task of eating a raisin. It's really hard to stay focused on that one thing the whole time, right? So your mind is going to go off all different places. And I think this is an important point, because here's where people get really stuck with mindfulness practice. They'll be like, I can't do mindfulness. I'm so bad at it because my mind wanders. I just can't get my mind to stay in one place. Well, No, I mean, that's not the point, is not to do it perfectly by not having your mind wander. The point is that your mind will always wander. That's your mind's job. It's there to tell stories and notice things and go off in different directions. And your job with mindfulness is just to notice that and then bring it back. So that practice of direction is going to happen over and over again. And that's just a skill you're practicing. Another tip for practice here, taking that stance like you're a curious scientist or like you're a traveler in a foreign country. I think that's another really helpful way to see it. So you've never experienced this before. This is totally new to you. There's so much to take in. And you're hopefully approaching it with a stance of openness. You know, with science, when scientists are doing their job right, you're supposed to kind of put aside your preconceived notions and preferences for how you want things to, and really supposed to kind of be objective and just notice what is happening when we do this. What's the result? Um, that's good science. It's not clouded by bias and judgment and criticism. And so along that line, you know, our minds are natural judges, and there's always that evaluative component in the back of our head. Some of us have it worse than others. You know, whether we're criticizing ourselves or we're criticizing other people, or like, I'm doing this wrong, or this is stupid, or this is boring, or you know, this is a waste of time. There's that tendency to always be judging and critiquing, you know, ourselves, other people, experiences. And so, as much as possible, when we're practicing mindfulness, we want to notice that tendency. And we're not going to stop it, right? It's not like you can force your mind not to do those things, but we can just kind of notice ourselves getting into that judgmental, critical mindset, and then just redirect back to, okay, well, let's just notice. Let's just be open. Let's just be curious. And let's just kind of leave that judgment in the background. So, taking these kind of principles, we can carry that forward into mindfulness exercises for really just about anything in your life. Uh, so, another exercise we can practice right now is exploring your hand. Unfortunately, I don't know the name of the person who came up with this exercise, but I read somewhere that they were inspired to make this mindfulness exercise after their infant, seeing how their infant was discovering their hand. So anybody who's had their own baby or has spent any time with infants, it's, I don't know, it's like 3 or 4 months old when they discover their hands for the first time. And it's so funny to watch because, you know, infants start out as basically blobs, and then they become more and more aware of their surroundings. Then they discover that there's this hand that's attached to them that they have some control over, that if they kind of will themselves to twist it a certain way, it's going to twist. And you can watch a baby about that age, 3 or 4 months or so, just watching their hand and kind of twisting it or moving their fingers or kind of bringing it around. And they're learning about their hand for the very first time. And it's just total curiosity and interest and focused attention. And so this practice, we're doing that. We're just going to explore our hand for a minute. So we can, you know, take our hand and kind of look at it, look at each side, the back of our hand and the palm. If we look up close, we can kind of see all those lines in our palm, right? And just kind of look at the different arcs that they take. And there's kind of the big defined lines that go across our hand. And then when we look closer, there's kind of like the tiny little lines that are sort of etched in. You know, if we kind of trace up to each of our fingers, we can look at our fingerprints. Kind of see how those are different, right? The different shapes of our fingerprints. We can look for any, you know, if we have like a mole or birthmark or any freckles or markings, any kind of cuts or scars. You can see what our nails look like. This is often where the judgment and evaluation comes in, right? So if we notice ourselves judging ourselves for our hand's appearance, we're going to notice that judgment, see that it's there, kind of bring it back. We can also kind of practice flexing our fingers a little bit, kind of see what it's like to move each finger independently or as a group. Like Dr. Tanno was commenting on how amazing the tongue is as a really strong muscle. And that participant was kind of noting, what kind of the power of your tongue to direct the raisin, right, and pop it back. If we kind of slow down and kind of notice what our hands can do, just notice how, if I've got my thing of raisins here, right, notice how your hand just kind of knows instinctively how to pick things up, how to put them down, how to move your fingers in just the right way. This is something we appreciate more if we have like an injury to a finger or something like arthritis, and that mobility in our hands that we often take for granted. We're going to be much more mindful of it and really notice it when it's limited. We can kind of bend it back and see all the different ways we can move our hand. We can look for the veins in the back of our hand, kind of see the different colors there. Right? See the different colors in our skin's pigment. See kind of like the blue lines showing through our skin with our veins. So, and you can do that kind of sort of careful observation with any part of your body. There's a mindfulness exercise called the body scan, where and this is, again, something that people find very relaxing, but it's not designed to be a relaxation exercise. It's just designed to kind of get you in the practice of focusing your attention. So just kind of scan your body from head to toe, noticing different internal sensations, right? Noticing any pressure or tightness, or noticing temperature differences, and just kind of steadily kind of working through your whole body. And again, just kind of taking your attention to one part at a time. That's something that we don't have time to really fully walk through today, but if you Google mindfulness body scan, you will come up with a whole bunch of different things on YouTube or different websites that can guide you through that practice. So that's one. And I'm just going to go through some other different kind of real world mindfulness practices that you can do on your own.
Dr. Moskowitz, quick question here. A couple patients have, it seems like when they start looking at their hands, there's a little more judgment that comes in, I think because it's a body part as opposed to a raisin.
Yeah.
We don't have the harmless raisin, but we judge our hands. So a patient had said, I never noticed how many age spots I have on my hand. Somebody else commented on how bent one of their fingers is from arthritis. So do you find that maybe it's more relaxing to look at something that isn't as personal as a part?
Yeah, I mean, if your goal is relaxation, then yeah, absolutely. If your goal is to practice mindfulness and to practice that muscle, that skill of letting go of judgment, this is actually, it could be a really helpful opportunity, because we're going to be less judgmental about a raisin, and so that's less of an opportunity to practice. But when we notice that judgment about ourselves, about our age spots, or their nails look gross, or whatever it is that we can, if we can develop that awareness of our thinking. So mindfulness it's really about the term is metacognition, so thinking about your thinking or awareness of your thinking. If we can be aware of that judgment and we can kind of deliberately try to put it aside and kind of redirect ourselves, then we can really practice being a little more compassionate about ourselves and practicing just noticing, purely to notice. And if you can kind of think about that baby who's discovering their hands for the first time, right? They're not judging how inadequate their hands are because they can't pick up the bottle and really feed themselves, or they can't manipulate small toys the way their older siblings can, right? They're just kind of fascinated by what is there, and there's nothing judgmental about it. So, if you're getting really stuck in that judgment and that self-criticism, then that's maybe time to kind of put that practice down and do something else. But I would encourage everyone to kind of give yourself the chance to do something that challenges you a little bit, that brings up a little bit of that self-judgment, and then really try to practice on noticing the judgment. Like, okay, well, there's that judging voice again, and then bring yourself back. Any other comments on that one?
Just another comment on wrinkles, but I think you can carry on with your presentation.
Yeah. So let's see. Okay, so the next one is on nature. And I think this is something I've definitely been hearing from so many of the individual patients I work with now. It seems like everybody has turned into a bird watcher. I mean, even if you're not, going full out formally doing it, I'm hearing a lot of people noticing the birds in the way that they weren't before. I know I'm definitely noticing the birds a lot more. And a lot of us now, when we're stuck at home, right? We're not going anywhere, and the one thing we can do to get out maybe is go for a walk around the block, or if we're near some hiking trails or walking paths, then we're getting out into nature. Probably right now more than we did before. And so that gives us a really good opportunity to practice mindfulness. This is going to be a less judgmental opportunity for practice. Um, and there's so much to notice when we get out into nature. I've got a little quote and a picture here from my daughter. So on the this was maybe like the third day of life in quarantine, and homeschool had just started, and their science thing that day was they were given a list of things to look for, like nature things to look for, and go for a nature walk. So we did that, and it was words I hadn't heard since, fifth grade biology, right? Like pistil and stamens, like parts of a flower. And we're looking for, this was March, right? So, the buds were just starting to blossom on the trees, and we're looking for all these different things. And this is this like tiny little yellow flower that we found on the ground, and that we're kind of hunching over and looking at, trying to find the pistil and stamen there. And so she said to me, she said, when I look around at the world, I don't see that much, but when I look closer, I see all the hidden secrets. And I was just like, oh, mindfulness right there. Um, and that's the magic of being outside and really looking, really paying attention to the natural world. There's so much to notice if we can just take our time and really see it with fresh eyes. And again, take that, everything we talked about before, right? Slowing down, focusing on one thing at a time, taking that open, curious perspective, and really kind of seeing things in a way. So this is definitely something I would recommend to everybody. If you can get outside and go for a walk, and go for a walk in the woods, that's fantastic. If you can't, even just kind of sitting, looking out your window or sitting on your porch, listening to the birds, looking at the flowers, looking at the trees. When it's raining, kind of noticing the sound of the rain tapping on your house, or kind of looking out and seeing it fall. There's just so many different ways you can practice mindfulness with nature. And it is definitely relaxing. Any more comments on that front?
Okay. No comments from patients.
Okay. All right. So another practice, 5 things. This is a really easy one to. We often use this for what we call grounding. When you find yourself getting really worked up, whether you're getting really angry, getting really anxious and kind of panicky, getting kind of caught up in really difficult memories or thoughts, this is something to kind of really focus your attention back into the present. And this is something that I practice with people in my office all the time. It's a very flexible exercise. You can do it all different ways. We could say, notice 5 blue things right now. And I could say, water bottle, tissue box, there's a blue marker, there's a blue blanket. We could say, for whatever color, right? It doesn't have to be blue. You could say, notice 5 things that are squares or rectangle. Notice 5 things that are, just notice 5 objects, right? Like, what are the first 5 objects you see? It could be also, you can kind of use that 5 things framework to go through your senses. What's something you smell, something you see, something you hear, something you touch, and something you can taste. All right, just run through your 5 senses. So this is a really good quick mindfulness practice. It doesn't take a whole lot of time or effort, but again, it's just that practice of redirecting your attention back to where you are right here, right now. Another common kind of everyday mindfulness practice is applying mindfulness to household daily activities like taking a shower, washing the dishes, folding laundry, all those kind of things, brushing your teeth, the things you just do because you have to do them. But if we can kind of really slow down and notice that the kind of the sensory aspect of it. So, feeling like when you're washing dishes, feeling the temperature of the water and noticing the soap suds and noticing the feeling of the sponge in your hand as you're squeezing, noticing kind of like the weight of each dish as you pick it up to wash it. Or folding laundry, kind of taking each piece of clothing and just really folding it with your full attention and kind of noticing how you're folding it. Again, those are activities that they don't really engage our mind that much. So these are oftentimes that our mind are wandering to all kinds of different places. And so we can practice kind of redirecting ourselves, bringing it back into this particular physical experience we're having at that very moment. So there's a whole bunch of different mindfulness, everyday mindfulness kinds of exercises out there. Also, I will say, the everyday mindfulness is really helpful and a lot more accessible, but there is a lot to be gained from more structured mindfulness practices, more like mindfulness meditation. And there's a lot of apps that make it very easy and accessible. So Calm, Headspace, 10% Happier, these are some of the really popular ones that people tend to gravitate to. They have to different degrees, they have different free resources during this COVID era we're in now. So I know Calm has a free resource page. Headspace is free for healthcare providers and essential workers right now. So, you can kind of check those things out. If you want to read more about mindfulness, Jon Kabat-Zinn has written a ton, and there's one in particular that I really liked. It's called Wherever You Go, There You Are, and it's just kind of little nuggets about mindfulness. This name, Vietnamese monk, I just looked up how to pronounce it correctly, and I'm gonna probably butcher it, but I think it's Thich Nhat Hanh. Vietnamese monk. He's written a lot about mindfulness, and you can look up, on YouTube, different interviews and talks and things for both of them. Mindful.org is a website with tons of resources. There's just so much out there. It can be a little bit daunting. So hopefully these can give you at least just a little bit of a start if you're looking to get some more mindfulness resources, some more practice. So that is what I've got for today. We could, if people want, I can kind of walk folks through kind of a little bit of more of a kind of structured mindfulness meditation, kind of more of like a breathing exercise and kind of focusing internally as opposed to focusing on something like a raisin or a hand or 5 objects. But before we do that, I just wanted to also give another chance to check in if there's other questions.
No questions at the moment. Probably about 5 minutes left for if you want to do some kind of an exercise. So maybe pick one that fits in that span.
Okay, so we can do just a really quick mindful breathing exercise. And for any of these more structured mindfulness meditation exercises, it's good to just first choose the right setting and environment. So some of you might be doing this, in your kitchen, and there's other people around right now. So, if you were to want to do one of these exercises, ideally you choose a space that's going to be quiet, where you're not going to be interrupted. You want kind of a calm environment, so try to get away from other distractions. When you're getting into mindfulness position, you're going to probably sit, if you're sitting in a chair, you want to have your feet flat on the floor, back straight, but not too rigid. Or you could sit kind of cross-legged on the floor if you want. You can do some of these lying down. You're more likely to fall asleep then. If your objective is to relax yourself to fall asleep, then that could be a good thing. But if you want to stay awake, you probably want to sit up. I'm going to walk you through an exercise right now. Some of you might not be in a good position to do that, so you can just listen. You don't have to, but if you want to kind of get a taste of it, we're just going to do this. And it's a lot more easy to kind of focus inward if you close your eyes. You don't have to. If people are in my office and they don't feel comfortable closing their eyes, I'll say just kind of look at the ground, Just going to put your eyes in a neutral gaze downward. But I'm going to close my eyes to focus a little bit as we're walking through this. And so we're just going to walk through a very basic mindful breathing exercise here. So we're going to get our bodies into a good mindfulness practice position. We're going to start just taking a few breaths. And one of the differences between this and a slow breathing exercise is in this practice, I'm not going to tell you how to breathe, like how to pace yourself or how to, move your breath through your body. This is just all about noticing the way your body is breathing right now on its own. Because every second, every minute that you're alive, your body is breathing without any conscious intervention on your part. Your body doesn't need to be told what to do. So in this practice, we're just playing the role of observers, of curious scientists, just watching your breathing. And since that can feel pretty abstract, we're going to focus in on a particular spot in your body where you really feel your breath. So it could be focusing in on your nostrils as you feel the flow of air coming in and out. It could be maybe a spot in your chest or on your shoulders where you really feel that rise and fall. Maybe if you're kind of breathing from deeper down, doing that belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, maybe you kind of feel your abdomen kind of expanding and then collapsing a little bit. So it doesn't really matter what the spot is, but if you want to just take one spot where you can feel that movement of your breath, just focusing on that spot. And if you want, you can put a hand on that spot. So if the spot is on your chest, kind of putting a hand there. Then your hand can really feel that movement also. And over the course of any kind of mindfulness exercise, your mind will definitely wander. It's not an if, it's a when. So when your mind does wander, we're going to try as much as possible not to beat yourself up and say you're doing this badly, you're doing it wrong. Just say, oh, okay, my mind wandered. Let's bring it back. So we're just kind of gently unhooking our attention from whatever it was that grabbed us and bringing ourselves back to our breathing. And you can think about your breath as an anchor in that way. So whenever you start kind of drifting out to sea, you remember you've got that anchor that's keeping you where you are. You've got that anchor to come back to. There's a lot of visuals that you can bring to mind now. One might be you're standing at the edge of the water by the shore and you're watching the waves go in and out. And each wave is a little bit different, right? Sometimes the water is stronger. There's a higher crest to the wave, kind of taking a different form. There's all that individual variation between waves, but the rhythm of the waves is constant. And you watch how effortlessly one wave just follows the next. It's the same way with your breath. Each breath is just following the next one. And so if you kind of imagine yourself standing by the edge of the water, watching the waves, you can also imagine that your thoughts are like clouds in the sky. So when you look up and see that blue sky, you see those puffy white clouds. Maybe they hook your attention for a few moments. Now, when you notice yourself getting hooked, you can bring yourself back down to earth, back down to the land and the edge of the ocean where you're watching the waves. And those thoughts are still there, right? We can't get rid of them, but just like the clouds in the sky, they're going to drift by on their own time. Let them kind of hang out there up in the background while you're bringing yourself back to those ocean waves, back to your breathing. Give you a few more moments just to notice your breathing, notice that rhythm. You can also notice what's happening with your breathing now. Maybe it's the same as it was when you started, or maybe it's different. Maybe it's a little bit slower, maybe it's a little bit deeper, maybe it's a little bit more regular and steady. Or not. There's no right or wrong here. We're just being those curious observers and just noticing what's happening without any intervention on our part. We'll take a few more breaths at whatever pace feels comfortable to you. And then you can push your feet into the floor, move your toes. You can shrug your shoulders or stretch. And whenever you're ready, you bring yourself slowly back to the space that you're in. Whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes and look up. And that is a mindfulness exercise. Right. So I guess last chance for any final comments or questions before we wrap?
We have one here. Oh, somebody just said thank you. But somebody had actually asked in the chat if there was anything special about the number 5.
No, probably. I mean, not that I'm aware of. It's just.
I was thinking it's enough to like break your attention from whatever you're focusing on before. All right, I think that's it for the questions. So again, we are doing virtual visits in the office. Dr. Moskowitz, are you taking new patients? What's your current patient acceptance status?
So, yes and no. So I am, but just in a limited way. So we're really kind of, the whole primary care model is all about short-term, just because we're trying to meet the needs of the whole practice at large. So we always want to be able to say yes. I always want to be able to see somebody new, but it's just, there's just a limit to the amount of follow-up I can do. If somebody is kind of struggling right now, feeling stressed or anxious, and kind of needs just a few sessions to kind of get some tools, maybe practice some of this mindfulness stuff, or kind of knows they need more but doesn't know how, kind of where to start looking for help, then we can definitely set something up. But if you know from the get-go that you need something more regular, kind of like weekly therapy, or kind of going for more of a long haul, then that's not something that I can do. But I can.
Yeah, and then we also have Dr. Park, who it's similar sort of story, but she's another psychologist here who is also seeing patients, but same idea that the idea is to be short term as opposed to somebody who has a long history of struggles with mental health who needs years of therapy. But this is not quite what we try to funnel your way. But again, I guess I just want to take a moment. Thank you, Dr. Moskowitz. That was wonderful. I feel like I just got a massage or something kind of in this Zen page. And thank you to everyone who's listening. Again, just quickly, Wednesday, Dr. Christina Council is going to talk about preventative care. So it's, an interesting way to learn about what are the updated guidelines on all the things your primary care doctor checks, your cholesterol, pap smears, mammograms, colonoscopies, that kind of stuff. But it's also a really good way to see Dr. Counsel's personality a little bit more. I know a lot of you have lost a doctor here, either with Dr. Kellogg retiring or Dr. Silverman's upcoming retirement or Dr. Liu being out on medical leave. So Dr. Counsel is one of our new doctors who's taking patients, so she's a good person to just see. And And then Friday, Dr. Berger is going to talk on humor in medicine. So, you know, we always love seeing Dr. Berger. He could probably like have his own YouTube channel. And then somebody just as a joke said, Dr. Moskowitz, don't offer Dr. Moskowitz's and Dr. Park's services to the masses. I need them for myself. Okay, so it's just our secret. We won't tell anyone else, guys. All right. Well, then I think that's it for today. Thank you, Dr. Moskowitz. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys all on Wednesday, and I'll be back in my home office because this office here is very depressing. So I'm excited to see daylight when I get back to my place. All right. Take care. Have a good day. Bye.